Welcome to Empty Suitcase with Our Chef Flamingos, a podcast featuring honest conversations around productivity, creativity, and agility for those working in and navigating the digital space. So, that's basically everyone these days. In this episode, we talk about transparency in the 21st century, where big tech has arrived and shifted the paradigm for human cognition and interaction entirely. We've reached a nexus in time where digital skills are no longer considerations or afterthoughts, but imperative if we want our species to coexist against increasingly complex technologies and systems. Narrowing it into our own borders, India's digital penetration has crossed 700 million people and is rising exponentially. The technological evolution in India has turned digital media forms such as social network apps into a source of news, opinion, social interaction, and subsequent validation. Being part of the digital landscape makes us no stranger to the problematic issues around selective censorship, polarization, misinformation, abuse of personalized data, and addiction in this space. In that light, transparency is the need of the hour. And role of a digital agency then becomes all the more crucial given the current state of things. This power comes with responsibility, which poses the question whether the voice we create will be honest and authentic or fake and manipulative. In this episode, we invite Amina Mattern. She is a global digital media sales leader with 12 plus years of global experience enabling companies to scale through partnerships, brand and performance marketing, and impactful go to market strategies. Her key areas of expertise include brand and performance marketing, business development, media sales, leadership and development, return on investment measurements, just to name a few. Amina believes in profoundly and positively impacting the world that we live in. Amina is a third culture kid who's lived in over 9 cities around the world. So, very, very excited to bring her on board for this episode. Hi, Amina. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Donna. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited for our listeners to hear what we have to say in this conversation because, like I said earlier, it's a very crucial topic and also kind of new, even though it's a very basic topic. So I'll go straight into it. Why does transparency matter and why is it important?
So, I think the topic of transparency is becoming increasingly important, especially in the industry that we work in, which is advertising and marketing. And I think you can broadly break it up into 5 different components of why transparency matters so much today. The first, I would say, is from a value proposition standpoint. So whether you're a brand or you're a business, um, you need to have a solid, honest offering. And that really boils down to the fact that, you need to be consumer centric. At the end of the day, consumers aren't stupid. They're, increasingly intelligent, and they know what's transparent and what's not. And so in order for your brand or your messaging to resonate with them, you really need to go back to that core value proposition. And that really, relates to Simon Sinek, and he's notoriously known for getting down to the why behind what you do. So, his proposition is consumers don't buy your product because of what it is. They buy your product because of why you're in the business in the first place. And that really does boil down to being transparent about what you stand for. I would say the third thing of why it's important is, from a financial perspective or an economic perspective. At the end of the day, it's shown through data that more transparent companies and more transparent brands actually have a healthier bottom line. And that makes sense when you think about it, even from an anecdotal perspective, because if you have a good experience with a brand, you're more likely to then go and buy that again. Um, and so, from an economic perspective, it's important too. And then I would say the fourth is, advertising and as an industry perspective. Advertising has notoriously been known for being a very untransparent industry. In that, a lot of the data, a lot of the tech is bundled, and at the end of the day, advertisers don't really know how much money is going towards the separate components of the supply chain versus actual working media dollars. And so there's increasing pressure being put on the industry to become more transparent, and I think that's a good thing. And the fifth reason for why transparency matters, I would say, is, showing that value chain that I just discussed and breaking apart all of the different components and laying it out for advertisers in a transparent way so that they're able to make a weighted decision in terms of where they want to put their dollars. So yeah, it's a great topic, and I'm super excited to dig deep into it today.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail with the value proposition part because even as a company here at DV Media Co., we try to inculcate it on our values and the way we do business. And we've split it into three layers. We look at it from a collaborator point of view, the people who work within the company. Then we look at from a partner point of view, the clients that we take on. Then, of course, the brands, because, end of the day, these partners come to us because they want to enhance their brand message. So as a collaborator, we look at it as like we have autonomy in our own domain, but we also have a panoptic view on the entire project. So this transparent environment for a collaborator means that we operate as a system and not in silos.
Right.
And then when we move on to our partners in business, we keep telling them that transparency is much more than a buzzword. It's a critical component in a successful relationship. It's a relationship. Some days are hard, some days are really hard. Most days you say it's okay because you are creating some sort of impactful content together. So, and then when we combine a collaborator and then a partner in business, and when we take it to the brand level, the answer is simple: transparency builds trust.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it comes down to trust. And even when we look at it from an advertising point of view, why it's become so important today is that at some point that level of trust was broken between the supplier or the publisher or between the ad agencies and their clients. So it just became a conversation where it's like, where's the trust? We don't trust you. We don't believe what you're saying. We feel like, you're quoting us this, but really we know like it's a markup.
Yeah. I think it's trust and it's value, right? Like,
Yeah.
we work in an industry in which you have to be creating value at all times, but that has to go hand in hand with building trust. And I think
Yeah.
the business model that you've incorporated at DV Media Co. is, quite simply very revolutionary when it comes to taking the traditional agency model and turning it on its head, and really starting from this building block and foundation of trust. Because what that shows me is that you're going to attract the same types of clients that have the same values inherent in what you guys are doing. And I think that's very important to build a relationship that's built on the same values.
Absolutely, because what happens is then when we say that we are a value driven company, so what happens is when we go to our partners and our prospective clients, if they are also value driven, the relationship becomes very easy. And then it becomes easier to work towards the same goal. More often than not, we see that gap when, we don't trust each other, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is a great segue into our next question. How can transparency make a team more innovative?
So, I mean, I've done a lot of studying on the issue of what makes teams thrive and what makes certain cultures and environments more suitable to innovation than others. And there's a couple of key components there. I would say that the first is transparency allows you to create an environment that's psychologically safe. And that's key. This is proven to be super beneficial when it comes to getting useful, valuable, contrarian opinions out of team members. If you don't have that environment built in, it becomes very, very tough. People go with the flow, they don't feel comfortable challenging you. And at the end of the day, all you're doing is replicating the status quo, which can be a massive hindrance when it comes to innovation and taking risks and failing fast and ultimately trying new things that may or may not be better to propel your brand or your organization forward. But you can only take those risks if you feel that you're in a psychologically safe environment. And being transparent, as an organization allows you to foster that type of an environment. So I would say that's the first. The second is interrelated to the first, but it's around this notion of risk taking. And I think that's very important because, in marketing and advertising, yes, there's media theory, there's the funnel, there's, a top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. And it becomes at times very easy to just do the same things over and over and over again. But really, we know that some of the most groundbreaking work in marketing has been done when a brand takes risks. And so I think that's very important to challenge, consumer notions of what's right, what's wrong, what does a brand stand for. And so transparency plays a very key role in risk taking. And the third, is wanting to achieve better. So it's this idea of like, yes, you at DV Media Co may have an amazing company today and you work with phenomenal people from across the globe. You're not bound by boundaries of like physical boundaries. You're able to work with anybody. And I think that that's a phenomenal business model. But tomorrow you may find that something else works better. And so you want to be able to constantly adopt things that will help propel your business and your organization forward. And there's a lot of influences that would impact what those things could be. There's social influences, technological influences, macro and micro influences. So the economy is changing, but I think having an open mindset and knowing that even if you fail fast, you learn from it, sets a really good tone, I think, for the rest of the people that you work with.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. If I have to layer this into collaborators and partners in the brand, it's for a collaborator, transparency means communicating openly and honestly with your team members and cultivating a culture where information can flow freely, between people and teams. And yes, feeling psychologically safe is so important. And it's so important to just take a moment to understand what that really means, because we keep talking about toxic negativity, but there's something called toxic positivity as well, where people are just constantly saying yes because it just feels like, oh, I'd rather avoid a situation where I have to disagree, so I'm just going to keep going with the flow. Whereas in a psychologically safe environment, you are trying, like you said, so even if you have disagreements, it's a respectful disagreement. And there are certain words that you use in certain tone, and sometimes it's all about taking some time before you respond to that email where you want to write a lot of things. So as a collaborator, it is about feeling like, okay, you know what, I feel safe to talk about my ideas here without feeling insecure about, oh, what if it's not good enough? Are they going to tease me about my idea? Or are they going to laugh? That happens, right? And as a partner, it's about tearing down the walls. It's about building a relationship. And it's not just about, oh, you just talk to one person. We are going as a unit. How I look at it is the team that comes together at DV, we are mini entrepreneurs in the sense that we are independent workers who also like to work as teams. So we're not really working for a big an organization and just dedicated to that organization. We do our own things, but we also come together for projects. So from that point of view, I mean, the only way it's going to work is if we have some sense of openness and we challenge each other and we tell each other like, okay, listen, this is what's going on. We feel this is what we should go ahead with. But if the client says, if your partner says no, it's not like, oh, we're just going to stick to that. We create an environment where we bounce ideas. And I find that it's quite different even for a business to get so involved. So what I've noticed
Yeah.
with value driven companies is that they are really involved in the whole process because they are also at nascent stage, most of the companies that I work with. So I think that involvement makes the whole process exciting.
I
um,
think so too.
and as a brand, it just comes down to making your consumer feel like they're part of something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
It's like every time you communicate, hey, this is what's going on, we don't have a solution yet, but we're working towards it. That's already making them feel like they're part of something.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I think that's critical. And there's this topic reminds me of this
mm,
course that I took when I was at Harvard Business School,
mm,
and they
mm,
talked about uh, transparency as an idea is
mm,
great, but it doesn't mean anything unless you have processes to actually bring it to life. And so one of the processes that they discussed was this notion of it's called devil's advocate. And what it is, if there's any big idea, you want to stress test that idea. So you split up the team into two. One part of the team is dedicated to being the proponent of that idea, and the other side of the team is responsible for poking holes in the idea. And I think that that's really interesting because you get to see both sides of the debate and ultimately land in an area which is hopefully the best of both worlds. So I think having processes in place that bring transparency to life in a way that's psychologically safe is also key.
absolutely. That is such a great example. It reminds me of one of the things that we do because we are a virtual office and we work in different time zones. So, how we approach this is when we receive a brief, what we do is we work on it individually first. And we write
Mm-hmm.
down everything like all the positives, the negatives, the challenges. You can do a SWOT analysis, whatever, however you work, your process. Some people write it down in Word documents, some people write it down in an Excel sheet.
Mm-hmm.
So we do this exercise and then we pick a date. Like, okay, we receive a brief 3 days from now. Let's have a conversation about what we have written down. And then we go through each and every person's what they've written down and then we combine it. And it's amazing the kind of ideas that's come together based off of this exercise. And not just that, because the session is solo and individual, people write
Yeah.
down whatever they like without that inhibition of like, okay, what if my
Mm-hmm.
idea is not good enough? And yeah, I think you're right. It's about having processes, figure out a plan, stick to it, and then see how things work out. We can keep talking about strategy. Strategy is something that we can talk about all the time, but
Yeah.
implementing it is
It's the
um,
operationalizing of it
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
tough part, right?
And
It's making those processes replicable. That's the important part.
yeah, and the same thing with transparency. I mean, it's a beautiful topic. It's a great topic. Everyone's talking about it, and everyone has a different way of analyzing it. I mean, I think sometimes looking at transparency through the lens of authenticity is a great way of,
Mm-hmm.
finding solutions. Which brings me to my next question. What does transparency look like?
Transparency, I think if you boil it down to the bare bones, it's really about making, the practices, the policies, the algorithms, even your code, operating data, any future plans available to all of the stakeholders, right? So to your customers, to your employees, or to your business partners. And I think that that's a very succinct way of describing what transparency is. It's very broad, but it is applicable to so many different areas of the business. And if you want to boil it down even further into two main buckets, I would say that transparency is on the value proposition side of things. So again, why do you do what you do in a very honest way? But it's also the business operations side of things. So for us, it's the supply chain of advertising. And I think that the latter, so the supply chain, has gotten a lot of heat in recent days, and I would say that it's very much warranted. With the growth of programmatic, as an example, in which so many different components of the supply chain became bundled, and it was very, very difficult to see where your ad dollars were actually going. And a lot of bad actors took advantage of this and made massive amounts of profit off the backbone of this. But what it resulted in was people not having confidence in the advertising industry anymore and really putting pressure on these players to become more open. And in fact, allowing new companies to see what was going on and build their own companies around the values of transparency. So we know who the main walled gardens are. We know that there's limited data passback. We don't really know where the dollars are going. So the best example that I always give around this is when you own both the supply and the demand of an ecosystem, that's very much the same as if you hired the same person who's trying to sell your house to buy your house. Like, you're trying to sell your house for as much as possible, and you're trying to buy your house for as cheap as possible. And it's the same thing in advertising, right? We want our impressions to be, when we're selling them, we want to make as much as we can off them. But when we're on the buy side, when we're buying impressions, we want to be as cost effective as possible. And so when you have a single entity that's responsible for both, that's where it becomes problematic, and that's where it becomes non-transparent. And I think when you own both sides of that ecosystem and you're not able to tell where those dollars are going, it's usually at the detriment of the brand or the advertiser. So, companies like the Trade Desk, I think, are doing a phenomenal job. Index Exchange is another one. They're Canadian, which is awesome, who have really seen this happening in the industry and have built entire businesses off this notion of driving transparency. And so, the Trade Desk is only representative of the buy side, as an example. And so I think that that's really great. It's allowing for more innovation when it comes to challengers in the ad tech industry.
Absolutely. And it opens up to diverse players in the industry, as opposed to, like you said, the same person buying the house and selling
Absolutely.
it too. We saw the programmatic revolution, and it was very interesting when it started, and to see where it is right now. And also, if you have to take a consumer, people don't want to see ads anymore.
Yeah.
Because there's a lack of trust due to a lack of transparency. People trust only earned media now. They're gravitating towards earned media because they believe that's more authentic than the ads that's being placed in front of me while I'm checking out in my news feed.
Yeah, and consumers are very savvy, and it's problematic when you start to underestimate them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's crazy because you're fully aware, but at the same time, the targeting is also that good. So I think as a consumer, sometimes you're torn between, is this for real or are they trying to manipulate me? They think it's manipulation, right? Because trust is gone. I think it becomes a question of manipulation. And even for advertising, I think advertising, the industry is going through a lot, especially with digital growing the way it's growing. I'm very, very curious to see where we're going to be in 5 years if we don't change the way we are doing things right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you mentioned it just a little while ago, the idea of manipulation. I mean, if you listen to anything that Yuval Noah Harari has to say, who I know you really enjoy listening to, he would say that there is no such thing as free will anymore, that our choices are the byproduct of being incessantly targeted over and over again by extremely sophisticated algorithms. And so, that has obviously very real life implications, but it also has philosophical implications. I mean, if you're saying that there's no such thing as free will anymore, then it begs the question, what do we really control? Or are we completely at the mercy of big tech?
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary thought. I highly recommend his book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, for anyone who's not read it. It's a great 21 lessons to think about, especially right now in the current world that we live in.
I just finished Homo Deus. It was great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all of them. It's just looking at the past, present, and future. So it's a holistic package.
Totally.
Amina, thank you so much. This was wonderful. I really enjoyed our conversation. And I just have one more quick one before I let you go. If people want to get in touch with you, because I know you're a consultant, and if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can email me. My email is Amina, Amina, at aminamattern.com. Or you can just search for me on LinkedIn and I'd be happy to connect there as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Donna.